Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. Our topic today is how HR can approach leveraging generative AI to elevate employee experience. And we're featuring Darryl Wilson and Risham Sahni of Kyndryl, the world's largest provider of IT infrastructure services. I'm Claude Werder, Senior VP for Research Operations and Principal Analyst for Brandon Hall Group. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, we're a global research and advisory firm focusing on all areas of human capital management. And the hot topic in HCM, of course, right, is AI in general, and generative AI in particular. But we're not here today to tell you how revolutionary it is or how important it is. I think all sorts of broadcasts and podcasts and webcasts have talked about that. I think that's pretty obvious by now, the power of all this and the change involved. But what's not so obvious, and what our two guests are here to help us better understand, is how enterprise HR organizations can actually leverage GenAI in strategic, meaningful, and specific ways to elevate the employee experience. As an analyst, I get questions every day from businesses trying to make use of AI, but they really struggle to get started. They want to know, well, what do we do? What are the rules? What are the best practices? How do we do it? And we're all pretty new at this, so there are many different paths a company can take based on what their goals and objectives are. But many companies find it difficult to get started. So the first company I thought of for this discussion was Kyndryl, because with a global network of experts serving customers in over 60 countries, Kyndryl designs, builds, manages, and modernizes the mission critical tech systems that the world depends on every day. So they know a lot about AI. But more importantly, as early adopters, they have learnings and insights to share from their own implementation of an AI powered productivity tool, Microsoft Copilot. And our research shows that the key to successfully leveraging AI is to find use cases that fit your business needs and objectives. And Kyndryl's done that. And Darryl and Risham are here today to share their story. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, but to get started, why don't we just get a little bit of your backgrounds and your current roles?
Yeah, thanks, Cloud, and really happy to be here. It's a conversation I'm having with many HR leaders and IT leaders. I'm responsible for Kyndryl Consult for Digital Workplace Services, which is our organization that helps customers with advisory services, project implementation services, et cetera, in a global level. So really happy to be here.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here. My name is Risham Sahni. I am the product manager for the collaboration space in the chief information office here in Kyndryl, and I was leading the team that did the M365 Copilot rollout. So like Darryl mentioned, that it was across collaborative across different departments, and we worked very closely with our HR teams, with Darryl's team, and with other functions in the organization to have this rollout. So happy to be here. Thanks, Claude.
Thank you. So maybe to get started, Darryl, maybe tell us a little bit about what Copilot does to start with, and why you decided to use this as one of your projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at kind of generative AI, I mean, AI has been around the industry for a long time. We've been using AI and machine learning, et cetera, in the delivery of our services for years at Kyndryl. But I think what really changed the game was, probably about a year ago with ChatGPT, where it just kind of exploded. I mean, if you look at when they introduced that with OpenAI, the amount of people that signed up and started leveraging that was really a game changer. And again, that was an OpenAI platform. The difference with Microsoft 365 Copilot is it's a similar kind of function, right? You can ask the AI questions and it can return information to you, but it's centered and grounded in the data of your organization, right? So that's a huge difference between kind of ChatGPT, which is just using information that's learned from the internet, to Microsoft 365 and your data within your organization, and being able to leverage the same sort of conversational, ask it a question and it returns a value. And that's really what it is. And it's really embedded in all the applications and tools most people use, whether that be Microsoft Teams, whether that be PowerPoint, whether that be your email client. And it's really embedded in the tools that employees use each and every day at their work.
Great. So Risham, let's bring you in here now. So what was Kyndryl's overall approach to the Copilot project in terms of enabling your employees?
Yeah. So I think our approach towards the overall rollout was a very value focused strategy. So we were looking at exploring and shaping our workforce dynamics through collaboration and bringing generative AI here. We wanted to increase the currency of our organizational information. That how do we increase the productivity of our employees? Like how can M365 Copilot act as a game changer when when you have to find that information? Like it's not new to anybody that when you start your day, you kind of spend a lot of time looking for the information, looking for, okay, which article am I supposed to refer, or which Word document I was last working on, or what was my manager like kind of assigned the task to be. So you wanted to simplify those things. And then M365 Copilot was exactly the tool which could bring all of these things together, like a simple query to M365 Copilot. What all tasks are assigned to me? What was the last file I was working on? I think that kind of shaped our overall strategy. Sorry for the rollout. Again, a lot of focus on the value disposition, like what are we actually getting and which job functions are kind of benefiting from the rollout.
So how did you get started then specifically? I think a lot of people struggle with how big should we start? Did everybody start at once? How do we make this work? So what was the approach you took?
So it was a phased rollout. So we started with something called early access program. And we had some 300 users using the license. Once we had the early access program completed, we kind of learned certain lessons. We had a value strategized, like how are we going to do a bigger rollout? We moved into a bigger rollout with 10,000 users currently using M365 Copilot and Kyndryl. And even before that, even before the early access program and the current rollout of 10,000 users using, we had something called pre-flight inspection. We kind of checked what is our current state of our Microsoft environment, and that kind of helped us in a complete phased rollout.
So take me a little deeper into, say, the pilot project. What was all involved in that, and how did you get people started? Because I think a lot of HR people struggle with just the basics of, okay, we're going to do this pilot. Now, what do I do?
Let's start with the early access program. So the first thing was that, we have to purchase those licenses from Microsoft. We need to go through our internal discussions, get the stakeholder alignment. So we got down on a desk and created who all are the stakeholders, which are the departments which we are supposed to talk to ensure we move further. And that's when we aligned with the HR, labor relations, legal, procurement, Kyndryl consults, data privacy, security, and compliance. Once we had all the stakeholders aligned, we started writing. We did a risk assessment first, like what kind of risks might get opened up. What is our current state in the environment? Like, do we have the information architecture or the data to support the rollout? Then we went through our reviews, our internal security reviews, our internal privacy reviews, the legal reviews, worked again together with the HR team to kind of create a use case submission scenario where we were like, okay, these set of people are going to benefit the most from the initial rollout. We also opened up it to the Kyndryls. We accepted the use cases from them. And then we went through each use case by use case to see, okay, this use case, like since it was an early access program, correct, we did had a risk assessment completed, but we did had some security reviews pending. So we wanted to first adhere to those use cases which had the lowest risk from a data privacy, security, compliance perspective, but at the same time getting us the most of the gains which we were looking for. So we went through the very thorough use case review process along with our stakeholders. And once we had the licenses, we built our in-house center of excellence. So our in-house center of excellence was a community of Kyndryls who will be using Copilot. And we went through the training. We explained onboarding sessions, which we called them, we are onboarding you to M365 Copilot. These are the trainings which you're supposed to go through. This is the forum where you can ask us questions, where you can share the feedback, and like, let's say you want to share within the community because you're the first few pilot users of M365 Copilot. You've learned something cool today. You want to share it with the community. So I think in detail, those were the steps which we took in the early access program, Claude.
What really struck me with what you said there was all the different parts of the organization that got involved and all the interaction. And Darryl, you and I have talked about the importance of HR and IT and other factions of the organization working together. That had to be a key part of this based on what Risham was just saying.
No, 100%. And if I kind of build on what Risham is saying with our own internal experience, what we're hearing with clients as we discuss this, really game-changing technology. I mean, I equate it to in the early 90s when the internet was born. I mean, before the internet, businesses and the way people worked, was one way. The internet fundamentally transformed business. We got into e-commerce, and the expectations of employees, changed fundamentally. Same thing with mobility. In 2007 when the iPhone was released, the BlackBerry, etc. I think those kind of trends that happened back in the day are going to be nothing compared to what we are going to expect from the workforce in the next 10 years. It is going to fundamentally change the skills that are required for individuals. It's going to fundamentally change our education programs as people enter into the workforce. And so, really making sure that we take a human-centric approach and not just a technology project is critical. And that's why, to Risham's point, working with HR, working with compliance and legal, working with IT is absolutely required for success. If this is just an IT project, you will not get the benefits of what this game-changing technology can provide.
So a lot of people collaborated. Was there a council or some sort of governance, or was it more informal? I think I get a lot of questions about that, so maybe we can drill into that a little bit more.
Yep. Yes. So like we had our stakeholders aligned, and then we started a committee called Kyndryl AI Governance Committee, led by CIO team. And then we had all these stakeholders invited to this committee. They brought their points on the table. And then in the initial stages, when we were doing an early access program, we used to meet every day for 2 hours because we wanted to go through each assessment, each use case in depth. And we also had the submitters of use case. So it wasn't just the committee taking decisions, but it was also the Kyndryls who had submitted this use case to bring their viewpoint, because at times, when you're on the other side of the table, you do not kind of completely understand what's the end goal. And that's when, since we had a lot of use cases coming from Darryl's Kyndryl Consult team, so we wanted to also understand that we implementing internally, how are we going to benefit our clients or customers? And that kind of viewpoint really helped us there. And this committee today is growing. And it's not just on M365 Copilot. It has expanded its horizons, and it's including much more other services. And now we have a very structured, a layout on these are the considerations from legal, these are the considerations from HR, legal. So we kind of have a blueprint ready, how are you supposed to get AI ready? And that's the framework this committee was capable of delivering. But everything was started with the commencement of the early access program of M365 Copilot. And Claude, if I may ask you, and if I may, add on to this, after 300 users, we purchased more licenses, correct? Now we assigned licenses to more people. And we changed our strategy, but we did not change the strategy to a higher degree. We were again very focused on value proposition, like the use cases which are being submitted, or the people who are using the Copilot licenses, they understand the capability and they're able to deliver some kind of like they're able to benefit from it. They're able to get that productivity. So some of these statistics are from the results, from our internal results. Like when we have, I would say we have a form where we intake these use cases, and then we have, as soon as you submit your use case for M365 Copilot, the other workflows they get triggered. Like you are supposed to submit a feedback, you're supposed to complete those trainings. By collecting the data, 94% of Kyndryls, after they submitted their use cases, believed that Copilot was able to address the challenges, and it provided an efficiency. And it kind of very much lay out how our rollout was, because I remember having those conversations with HR teams, and like let's discuss and let's understand which job functions are going to benefit the most. Like, is it the project managers who are going to benefit the most, or are we looking at the developers community, or are we looking at somebody architects community? But we kind of laid it out when we were having our use cases submitted by job role, and the overall strategy even helped us to achieve this number of 94%, where then Kyndryls believe that Copilot was able to address the challenge.
We're just going to build on that. I think one of the key areas that I think where we've seen great success, and the reason for such high adoption, is really that having a very strong organizational change management adoption program for this type of technology. Really, any end user technology is paramount. And as I look at my career over the last 25 years, sometimes training and adoption took a back seat in IT projects, right? They just implement a technology. They really haven't focused on users, and it's always been a challenge. But it's one thing we firmly believe within Kyndryl is these end user based technologies really have to have a strong adoption change management program, because again, this one specifically is fundamentally changing the way I do my work job every day. It's unbelievable. But if you think you're going to implement technology and just it's going to give you the return on investment, I think you're sorely mistaken. And that's why I think HR and change management and really the culture of change and transforming the business focused on that employee experience is so critical for generative AI in the future.
What really struck me about what you were talking about was it was an enterprise-wide approach, but also at the same time very contextualized and personalized down to individual use cases. And I think that that's what I feel is missing a lot of times in technology change management is there might be governance, but it's a bunch of people in some sort of committee or council, and they're like in this bubble talking about everything. But you had some of that, but you also looked at the individual work cases and make sure everything was integrated specifically to the use cases. And I just wanted to accentuate that, because I think that's the key to success, is both enterprise and small scale as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Claude, that's how our strategy was also. Like, we really want to bring the Kyndryls on the table and understand that how do they want to improve their productivity, and not just that. So recently in our feedback structure, which we have incorporated, Copilot is going to help you save, let's say, 10 minutes per day. How do you want to spend those 10 minutes? Maybe you want to do something for yourself, improve your well-being, go out for a walk, or just take those 10 minutes back. But we wanted to understand that at an individual use case level. Of course, when we were doing an enterprise-wide strategy, it would be difficult to have each individual to be spoken to. So we kind of changed the strategy a little, and we got teams involved. So we said, okay, from every team, there would be a point of contact for us, and we are going to work directly with that point of contact. And that point of contact will let us know how are they benefiting from that use case, what should we do to help them. So we had this close collaboration, and we still, every month, we have the Kyndryl's Copilot Champions call, where all of these use case submitters, they join these calls and they share their feedback, that how much are they benefiting, how can we help them to benefit. A lot of times, I remember when we were starting for our HR team, we did one session in collaboration with Microsoft, where we kind of went through a day in the life of an HR professional for M365 Copilot. And that was a very great session, because that's when you can actually correlate the capabilities of Copilot with something which you're doing day-to-day basis.
So Back toward the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned you'd gotten a lot of learnings and insights from these programs. What are some of the metrics that you focused on to gauge, besides the fact that people thought the tool could help them? What other types of metrics did you collect?
Yeah. So we definitely wanted to understand about how many minutes or how many hours are being saved by using Copilot. Is it reducing your mundane work? So start some of the statistics if I could read out. 88% of Kyndryls believe that using Copilot, they're able to save 20 minutes per day in finding an information related to your organization. So with Copilot, it makes it 20 minutes faster to fetch your organizational or your institutional knowledge. The other statistics was again more around the hours saved. So 54% of Kyndryls believe that they have identified 10 hours of saving in a week overall with the use of M365 Copilot. And then in our usage reports, and it's a cool number, 35,266 hours were saved across M365 Copilot users for the last 28 days. So these, like, again, we have a lot of statistics, but just to focus on the top four, and then the first one, which I mentioned, that 94% believe that Copilot has helped addressing the challenges. Till date, we have around 740 use cases submitted, around which 628 were positive use cases. I'm calling it positive because sometimes they do not align with the capabilities of M365 Copilot, and then the education angle comes in. And we have already received feedback from 642 use case submitters. So that's how our statistics are being driven today.
Yeah, I could definitely build on that. I mean, we were part in the consult organization of the early adopter program. And just to make it real life examples, I mean, often in our business, we are responding to customers' RFPs or requests for proposals. These are often, large documents that the customer has prepared. A lot of work goes into it, hundreds of pages. By leveraging what we call prompt engineering, or the way in which you interact with the generative AI, I had one example of someone on my team that asked a query to the large language model on a particular document. What are the salient points I need to be able to understand in this RFP according to the best practices for Microsoft, et cetera. Within a minute, it came back with a list of things that has been requirements that have been provided by the RFP within like a minute. We then went in and did what we normally would have done, right? An engineer or a high level skilled person would go in, read line by line the 150 pages and make notes. And that would probably take close to at least a day, 8 hours at least, if you really want to look at it. They looked at it and what the result was of the AI, and they said it's probably plus or minus 90% accurate. So you can just think of the power of just one person reading one document. It was like 7 or 8 hours saved. Again, this is going to be evolving over the next couple of years, and the way in which you pose the questions is key, and that comes back to OCM. But I mean, impressive. I mean, if you do that, you multiply that by 80,000 Kyndryls. I mean, I think the statistics that Risham has said is actually light.
Yeah, it's we talk about game changers. It's way beyond a game changer. It's like mind-boggling the amount of savings. It almost can reconfigure your entire workforce and how people work.
And I think the thing is, it shouldn't be about, okay, well, that's great, then we can remove people out of the business. No, it's about, hey, I don't have to invest in new people because my existing people are going to be much more efficient. And so as you look at trying to be the employer of choice or a great place to work, how are you attracting people? You're attracting people by having a great employee experience, which really requires, especially the new people coming into the organizations, with game-changing technology. People don't want to come into an organization with tools that are 1990 2000s, right? They want to come in, and they've been learning in universities how to use these tools. They're digital natives, so really critical to take advantage of this.
So we talked a lot about the metrics, and it's fairly early in the program yet, but what are some of the impact on the business that you see happening from these kind of savings that you're beginning to realize?
I could start. I mean, I think it's still early days, right? I mean, this is a new technology that Microsoft released in November of last year when generally available. We're still collecting data. We're still getting more telemetry out of the tool. So we're still looking at that. The next piece is obviously how do we take that and really then correlate it to your point, Claude, on business objectives. It's one of the key things that we're hearing from our customers when we're talking about this, because it is such a game-changing technology. The couple things that our customers are saying, well, what are the use cases that I can really leverage it? So, I mean, Risham has talked about the importance of that. But then the next question quickly becomes, okay, what's the return on my investment, right? There's a per cost, per user, per month that you need to be able to justify that technology purchase. So I think over the time we will see that, and we will try to figure out how can we take these productivity savings and actually address business objectives for Kyndryl, whether that be increasing our customer acquisition rates, etc. I mean, we can look to do that, but I think it's still early days to really draw the hard parallels. It really is a time saving. I could talk as a user. It is absolutely a time saving. I probably work a lot more than I used to because I'm not doing the mundane tasks anymore. And I think as the products evolve, right, as they continue to iterate, you will start seeing much more, and then hopefully we'll get a lot more metrics that we can answer that question specifically.
I would imagine some of that other work that you're doing is more meaningful and enjoyable. Yeah.
Exactly, and we've seen AI, and that's what when we look at our business, in a contact center scenario where you're calling in, the contact center agents typically have to take notes. They have to summarize what they heard on the call. I mean, it's a lot of manual labor. We've eliminated a lot of that, for the last couple of years using AI technology to summarize those things so that those agents or those customer service reps can actually provide high value work to the people calling in versus spending all their time doing things that quite honestly technology can now do for them, right? So to your point, I'm getting rid of the mundane tasks, but I'm now able to focus on high value work, whether that be having a one-on-one with an employee so I can spend time with them because I don't have to, do all this, email and all these other triage things that are just kind of noise. I can actually focus on what I'm trying to do as a leader in the business.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I talk to leaders all the time, and they get pressured to have more one-on-one time with their team, and they are always saying, well, but I have all this other work to do. I have all this admin, all these reports. You eliminate that, it gives a lot more time for people to interact and work together and collaborate. So let's talk a little bit about, you've obviously learned a lot from these early projects, and maybe both from the CIO point of view and the HR point of view. What are some of the key learnings that you can take away and maybe share with our audience in terms of things that they should really be thinking about in order to be successful on projects that they're going to be working on?
Yeah. So I can start from the IT point of view. And from an IT point of view, one thing which was very important, which we learned in the early days of the rollout, is that our information architecture should be very clean. It should be on point. It should have the correct accesses. It should have the correct kind of metadata, data tagging, classification. Because one thing which we need to understand, Copilot will have access to the data which you have access to as a user. So if your data is not correctly structured, it's outdated, then you might not get the correct information. So what we did was, like, I remember it was during the time of autumn, it was our autumn clean, and we cleaned all the SharePoint sites which were not being used. We deleted all the Teams groups which were not again being used. There was a project team specifically working on just doing the cleanup of the data. So they used Copilot again to do the cleanup of the data, because they used to ask Copilot the questions, and when it used to present the link, and if that link was outdated, we went and we corrected that information, or we purged that SharePoint site. So one thing which is very important is from an information architecture perspective, and that holds good for anything. I remember I was working very closely with our HR team, because HR has a lot of information, and that information is at a country level, and the policies are available at the country level. So we did not want any ambiguity, because yes, with Copilot, it's easy to search for information, but this also means that, all those outdated information surfaced. So we did this 20 days collaboration with our HR teams, and we went through every SharePoint site, ensured that all the policies were updated if there was anything, because there were a lot of COVID related norms which were included, which were supposed to be modified at a country level. So we just did a very thorough cleanup from an information architecture perspective. Talking from an HR point of view, one thing which we missed was so when we were working on this project. So first we had early access program, just 300 users, and which was just like a few users from I would say from our teams. But when we wanted to do a wider rollout, we did not had all the approvals from our workers council. So we did had HR teams working with us, but I think we missed one piece of it, which was our workers council representation teams. So we remember, and I'm laughing this out right now, but it was very stressful. Like months back, we had the SharePoint site, and we said, we are going live, and then as soon as we went back, we gradually realized that we got that information from our labor relations that, you do not have the worker council approval for those countries. So we had to change that SharePoint site very, we just changed the information. Then we again sat down and created a mind map or a solution that how do we approach the workers council and we get those approvals. So we started with one presentation to the complete community of the worker council's representation. We did one initial presentation. We took questions. We explained our strategy that, how are we going to do the rollout? What are we going to do to support the employees from a training, education, adaptation perspective? Whom are they supposed to reach out in case of questions? So after that first initial meetings, we got a lot of approvals already. But for few countries, they had some more questions. So that was handled at a country to country question level, that they used to reach out to us over email, or they wanted us to have a separate meeting. I remember I had some meetings with Austria Workers Council, and then for Belgium and Luxembourg, and we all discussed. We showed them what kind of usage data we are able to fetch, how are we going to help them with the training, education, what is our rollout. So yeah, that was a very key learning from an HR point of view. Like we kind of missed the labor relations piece of it, and then then we kind of got all the approvals which are required. And today we have the approvals from all the workers council. So in all the countries, we have Copilot users, Copilot users from Kyndryl. From a security and a compliance point of view, data privacy, again, we had a very close tie-up with data privacy and legal with the start of this project itself. We did technical solution documentation, presented it to the security, what all permissions are being used in the backend. They were actually one of the first few use case submitters because they wanted to sit through the process with the committee to understand, and eventually they also realized that how Copilot can even help the security and compliance team in their processes, in their initial screening of the technical solution documentation. Again, a lot of focus on information architecture, sharing, permissions, and access controls.
Darryl, anything you would like to add in terms of insight on what people can do to be successful?
Yeah, I think, it's great. It's a new technology, as I mentioned, that got announced. So, by having us be able to work closely with our CIO and our HR teams internally, it's allowed us to be able to go out and help customers advise on, the lessons learned. I mean, we got a lot of the scars on the back, as Risham can explain. There was a big excitement that Copilot was ready, and then, we had to retract very quickly. I was in a CHRO conference in December in Toronto here. It was probably about 160 leaders. And we had a breakout session in that session around generative AI in HR and in more wider context. And I brought up the case study that Risham was talking about, and most of the people were actually flabbergasted. Like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't even think about that, right? So I really think it comes back down to, this is not just a technology project run by IT. I think the key thing is it's a technology project, run by IT, but with close partnership with HR, close partnership with legal and compliance, and that's got to be at the start of the charter, right at the beginning. It can't be at the end, right? That's the key. start at the beginning and then run the program is what I would say my number one learning would be. And then everything else Risham talked about in terms of information architecture is just critical. Most of our clients, I'll tell you right now, are not in a position where they could turn Copilot on today. I've heard horror stories where people are asking Copilot and then they're getting, confidential information about the CEO being returned. Like it is absolutely the first step is to make sure that is done.
Just to reiterate one thing, and then I'll ask you for final thoughts before we wrap, and that is we've done research with Kyndryl, and we asked about the HR IT collaboration, and one of the things that was really interesting is when we first did the research, very few HR people thought that Gen AI was even going to have a big impact on the organization. And then when we asked it a little bit 6 months later, they said, okay, yeah, this is going to have a big impact. But the thing that didn't change between the questions we asked was the level of HR involvement in the Gen AI strategy. Only 36% of HR organizations told us they were actively involved. And so to your point, we need to try to change that. We need to get HR to be much more involved in this process and collaborate across the spectrum and with IT and labor relations and security, all the different functions to make sure this works. So this has been great. Let's maybe wrap up with some final thoughts from each of you. Risham, I'll start with you. Any key takeaways you haven't covered already that you want to mention?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. One thing which I think we have reiterated multiple times throughout this session was the cross collaboration was the key. If I go back 6 months down the lane and I think, will CIO be able to do this alone? No. The answer is a straight no. It's the cross collaborative effort in Kyndryl, which kind of made us successfully flow from one stage to the other stage. It's very important to have all the departments aligned, and it's not just about seeking their approval. It's about having the collaboration and just ensure that whatever we do, we have a common goal in the mind, but also at the same time, we keep our individual users in consideration, like what do they actually need, not what IT wants to do for them.
Darryl, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, as I said before, this is going to make the internet and I'll say mobility look like a minor event. This don't kid yourself. This is actually going to change the way people work. It's going to affect employee experience. So as you're looking to attract and retain talent, be a great employer of choice, great place to work, etc., this has to be in your strategy. It is going to change the world forever. And let's just make sure that we're all partnering to generate that great employee experience, which ultimately revolves into a great customer experience, right? All your employees deal with your customers. And if you can leverage these technologies to increase your customer experience, then it comes back to your point, Claude, about what are the business results that can be happening. And if you have this program collaboratively delivered, I think you'll be in a great position to compete against your competitors.
Great. Well, Darryl, Risham, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. I hope you all agree. This really, I think, will probably open a lot of people's eyes in the level of collaboration needed and the importance of using Gen AI in a really strategic way. So thank you to Kyndryl, and we'll say goodbye to everyone and hope to see you on another podcast very soon.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
Claude.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.